Welcome back to Seattle Sucks, a podcast about hating the city we love. It's me, Colin. I'm here with Greg and Brian, and we have two guests to talk elections. Dr. Kevin, you're back for your second time on the show, and a new guest, Brad. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. Welcome back, Dr. Kevin. Hello, Bradley.
Well, to be clear, it is Kevin the person, not the squirrel, who's also a frequent appearance on the show.
That's true, yeah. One is the namesake of the other. We'll let you figure it out. So we're going to talk about, like we promised last week, we're going to talk about the third, because we just haven't really dived into that yet. On the eve of the election here, we're finally going to really talk about the city council race in the third. That's you may have heard of Kshama Sawant and this mysterious figure with a mysterious name, Egan Orion, who we're going to find out about today. I want to start, though. Multiple people have been shouting at me in person and online about whether I have read this absolutely dog shit column from Newt Berger in Crosscut. I just want to touch on that because it's about the third. The title is Trotsky versus Bezos. Seattle's race for District 3 echoes throughout local history.
Oh, this sounds like a very well-measured, thoughtful piece.
The kind we read.
From a guy named Canute.
Yeah. But before I get into Mossback, I want to give Kshama herself the first word in this argument here. She also had a piece this week in Teen Vogue. These are some of the things she had to say. I want to hear what she thinks of her time in office and this campaign, like in her own words, before we hear from Newt. My first week in office, two longtime established politicians came by to inform me that they would not allow me to pass any legislation, much less the $15 minimum wage, and that City Hall would continue to run on their terms. Ask yourself, have in your mind, whose terms we're talking about here. But they were unable to stop our movement. 6 months later, our grassroots 15 Now campaign worked alongside labor unions and community activists, had won a groundbreaking minimum wage ordinance that made Seattle the first major city to pass $15. From here, minimum wage victories spread to more than a dozen cities and several states. Since then, the establishment hasn't had much luck stopping socialist politics. We've won historic renters' rights laws, tens of millions for affordable housing, and replaced Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day. So I hear Kshama Sawant there talking about real important things she's used her time on the city council to do for people, including but not limited to the people in her district.
No, the minimum wage law only affects people outside of District 3.
Yeah. Okay, so keep all that in mind when we jump into...
Canute takes this into account.
Yeah, well, this is... oh, God, it's so fucking stupid. He opens it like this. For more than a century, the eternal conflict in Seattle politics has been a power struggle between the business community and the left. And you're like,
I gotta tell you, Greg, I was getting extremely excited when I read this.
Yeah, right?
I was like, Canute's getting it. Yes.
Yeah, he's
all struggle has been class struggle.
Exactly.
He's understanding.
Right? The potlatch riots of 1913, the general strike of 1919, the labor unrest on the waterfront in the 30s, all hot fire, the civil rights era in the 60s, which... Honestly,
I feel like he's falling away a little.
No, but I'm with him here. But you really, to connect those things, you really feels like you kind of need to go through Marx.
Correct.
Which is not sort of the normal liberal way to look at civil rights, and the confrontations over globalism and free trade during the WTO protests in '99 have all reflected an ongoing wrestling match. In one corner, the Chamber of Commerce. In the other, socialists and labor of one flavor or another. So, like you said, endless battle. He's getting class consciousness or something. All struggle is class struggle. He goes in to talk about all the money that Amazon has dumped in the race. He reviews their involvement in the head tax and how they've For this reason and others developed this image as a bully in the city politically. And he goes on to say, critics of Amazon are legitimized in their belief that the big tech company is trying to craft a company town to their own specifications. So, again, like, I'm kind of on board here, right? Like, but he's too stupid to understand what he's even saying. He then goes on to say, on the other hand, some alternatives are also very problematic. I live in District 3, where my choice is between a business-backed political newcomer, Egan Orion, and Kshama Sawant, who perhaps can be said to represent the Socialist Alternative Party rather than the district or its constituents. She's a grandstander whose party has contempt for many of the liberal, pragmatic, reform-oriented Democrats, like this comfortable fucking asshole, who vote for her, though they further her goal of global revolution in the spirit of Leon Trotsky. Okay, I just whatever. It's like she's not thankful enough to liberal shits like him who claim to have voted for her, I think is what he's saying. He's saying, I voted for her and she doesn't respect me. Sawant was a spark plug for the $15 an hour minimum wage, which was great. But she didn't do it alone. Burn. And then... So
we all know it would have happened without her. So
yeah, exactly. The council was moving that direction. We all saw it.
She had the right opinion on an issue I apparently agree with, but whatever. Yeah, he goes on to
no credit for that.
Then he sort of nitpicks like some shit with the Showbox rescue project, which he actually says he liked about that, and ultimately. He never finds time to say actually anything he disagrees with about Sawant, except the stance she takes that she's a grandstander, and all these sort of signifiers that are really almost aesthetic. And then he says, so, as ballots go into the box this week, I find myself confronted with this general dilemma. Trotsky or Bezos? Whose town do I want to live in? The Soviet of Seattle or a Seattle underneath a vast Amazon sphere? My answer is neither. Oh my God. So... I mean, it's like...
This is Canute actually embracing anarchism, and he just, no council, no managers.
Well, he's on this full-on, like, centrist trip, right? So he says, okay, it doesn't have to be this way. We've had more reasonable, progressive regimes where progressivism and civic progress happen together. That was 3 uses of the meaningless word progress in that one sentence. We passed open housing, launched the Burt Gilman conversion, saved Pike Place Market, Chinatown International District, and Pioneer Square. We created Discovery Freeway and Gaswork Parks. We saw the launch of Daybreak Star, El Centro de la Raza, the Seattle International Film Festival, Gay Pride Week.
It's a real mix.
Bumbershoot.
Oh, hell yeah.
And Macklemore.
Pea patches.
And Macklemore. Who grew out of a pea patch.
We stopped the freeway building binge. Did we, though?
No.
Downtown.
Our stern refusal to raise money. We stopped.
Yeah. Downtown condos bloomed. He's looking like wistfully up. He's making a wish on a light that someone left on in a condo. And Seattle oh God, this is good. Seattle boys Bill Gates and Paul Allen moved their budding Microsoft startup to the region. The list goes on and includes notable failures, including the failure to pass mass transit. But still, this independent, progressive, and creative problem solving helped establish a foundation we enjoy today. Did you hear that fucking list? Okay, open housing, Daybreak Star, and El Centro de la Raza, not bad things.
Which required a takeover of Fort Lawton by the indigenous community in Seattle.
Exactly where I'm going
Canute
with this.
was there. We did it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we have a couple of historians on the boat. I mean, how you guys like that rundown? Some good stuff in there. Pragmatism.
I mean,
that's the
it's totally
secret.
nonsensical. Centro de la Raza is the product of aggressive radical activism on the part of the Chacanex community here. I mean, what is that list that's so incoherent? I don't even know what to do
where do
with
you
it.
start?
He's just dancing on
But
either side of the
so
line.
there's two sort of categories here. It's a lot of middle class signifiers. Okay, there's just plain elite and stupid things like the Seattle International Film Festival and Bumbershoot, frankly. Then there's parks, which could be enjoyed by a wide variety of people, but for the most part, this is a list of things that land well above the hierarchy of need of fucking most people who are struggling to survive, right? There's only a couple of things in here. Passing open housing that really qualify as something actually progressive.
It's like a faux progressive list of like white upper middle class Seattle values.
Yeah, exactly. I like the Pike Place Market too, but I mean if that was the shit that this is about, then that's why this election doesn't affect Newt Berger's fucking life, right? Because this shit it's all signifiers. It's largely aesthetic.
Yep.
And like you said, people had to fight for that Daybreak Star Center. Well, he wants to fetishize this balance between business and the left or whatever, this two-party system or whatever. But I would ask him, why was it so fucking hard to pass a $15 minimum wage? Why wasn't the minimum wage already $15 a decade earlier? Why isn't it higher now? And it's because there's no fucking balance. Power in this town, in this country, is in the hands of capital, which is why you actually have to fucking fight, which is why someone like Kshama Sawant would be a fucking idiot if she wants to win this fight against capital to not name those people. And So...
And let's keep in mind, she is one member of the city council. The other 8 are Democrats.
Well, according to all of the Seattle press, she apparently is one of one member of city council, controlling all of it.
Yeah, everyone's actually running against her in every district.
Yeah, I mean, Greg, luckily Canute actually answers all your questions right here by letting you know that it takes people without Manichaean loyalties, people committed to local improvements, to working together, to getting things done with less posturing or bullying.
This is
we don't need a pro-business council or a pro-socialist council.
We already have a pro-business council.
Yeah, that's where power is, right?
Yeah, they need...
When he says we don't need this Manichaean choice, or Manichaean loyalties, right? He's like, well, are you saying that Amazon running this town is a gray area?
Well, he just wants a council of radical, disruptive cooperation.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, so we got the historians on the boat. I mean, obviously people are losing their fucking minds, and Knute Berger chief among them. What the fuck's happening with the city council that they all of a sudden care so much? So I feel like he wasn't writing this article 2 years ago or 4 years ago.
This is the chance to get for the business interests for the chamber and for comfortable shitheads like Mossback, Swampback, Moss thing, whatever, to oust this upsetting creature, Kshama Sawant. And what's funny about that is, to do that, the vehicle they have chosen is someone called Egan Orion. And my question is why? Bradley and Dr. Kevin, do you have any idea?
Who is Egan Orion?
So,
Was he grown in a pea patch?
Good question. So, I mean, so district, as I've talked at length about last time I was here, is Seattle's history of gay window dressing. And District 3 is, of course, where Capitol Hill is, the historic center of gay life in Seattle since the late 70s. So I imagine they are running him as someone that, like a member of the quote-unquote gay community. He was involved with Seattle Pride Fest when it first moved off of Capitol Hill to downtown to become this corporate celebration of Seattle's embracing of its gay community.
He quote saved it in his own words.
Yeah.
Saved it by getting an
Yeah.
Amazon sponsorship.
And then,
By begging the police to participate
right.
more.
And then in, was it 2016? I talked about this last time on the show, but he took it over again during the whole airline debacle, that whole mismanagement over corporate sponsorship in the parade, which was just like out of control.
Yeah, and so it was basically like one airline had agreed to like sponsor it, so they told another airline they couldn't be in it. Something like that, 'cause they were like a competitor.
They told Alaska Airlines,
Yeah.
which is, of course, the one that is headquartered here, that their employees could not march. And that person resigned in disgrace when employees protested their way back into the parade, and Egan Orion saved the day, apparently. So, yeah, you know, he's organized one of the biggest celebrations of corporations in the city of Seattle. If you've ever been to that march, it is well over 50% corporate sponsors. Community organizations really are just lost in this sea of corporations, the Seattle Police, you know, the Seattle Sounders march in it. It's really an ally parade.
Well, hence maybe why they moved off of out of the gay neighborhood in the first place. I mean, why did they move it? I mean, why you have a pride parade? Why wouldn't you have it in the gay neighborhood?
Well, all
right?
these corporations have to be able to see it from their office windows. So,
And they needed a much larger venue as well, which was downtown.
Yeah, and the when it was unleashed, the downtown parade, it was announced when the official announcement of moving the location of it was that gay people live everywhere now, as if that wasn't fucking true before 2007.
Amazing. They're not just quarantined in the gay ghetto.
Right. But yes, it's Seattle has since the 70s, and moving it is part and parcel of Seattle pushing forward this idea that Seattle is this kind of gay mecca. It's of course the elephant in the room is that Seattle's really like trying to compete with San Francisco, who has its Pride the same weekend as Seattle.
Are you implying that Seattle has visions of being a better, more important city?
I mean, Seattle is just lock and step behind San Francisco so hard with, I mean, we all, I forget what the publication was about 6 years ago said, but that Seattle had an opportunity to not become the new San Francisco, and it failed. And that was because of the pro-business city council that was in place before Kshama Sawant came in. Did she come in 2013?
2013.
Yeah.
So do we... so Egan Orion obviously was like he was somebody, right? I mean, like, in order to have been, intimately involved in moving the march down to downtown, right? And then coming in to save the day when this airline situation, happened at this last march. He's somebody, but who the fuck is he? So I swear to God, he's an image that they just got off of a website for advertisers and have put up. I am not convinced he's an actual human being.
I'm not either, and I've even seen him at debates.
I think he's one of the leftover headshots they didn't cast in that first Volkswagen commercial with the two gay guys.
Well, I mean, do you guys have any sort of feel maybe for who the fuck this guy is?
No, I mean, I think in a lot of ways, I think looking back to this is my take on it, right? Last election, right, Pamela Banks was the sort of challenger to Kshama. And this has been a longer arc than just this election, right? And they were feeling out, I think, the chamber, but also just business owners in general, right, were feeling out a candidate that could be electable, right? And a biracial pro-business woman was not going to do it against Kshama, right, in D3 with its changing demographics. So they needed a window dressing, cute and fuckable gay man, right? And that was going to get
new information.
Plenty. The number of friends that I have, right? Well, it's I'd fuck him. Who are gay men, right? And it's
you don't have to vote for him afterwards.
Yeah, exactly, right? And it's just the ability, right, for him to put out a soundbite, right, for him to have really good PR and marketing, right, and for him to be fuckable, right, is half the battle.
Yeah, being fuckable was like Ari's campaign strategy too. It didn't work out. It's weird.
It's a different district.
Yeah, different district. Yeah, there you go. And so yeah, I mean, like, so is the vibe like basically that at that level then at this point? Like when you hear that people say like, "Hey," so Brad, you live in District 3, I guess we should be clear on. But is the vibe kind of like that when you hear people maybe say that they like Egan Orion or something? It's like literally that surface level of like I saw a picture of him. He looked or like I mean, because like, he doesn't seem to have anything. I don't know what does he stand for. I know he stands for chamber shit,
and like
but like
literally
that's about it.
Like even looking at his like website, right, or anything that he sends out, it's nothing. I mean, he doesn't. There are no policy points, right, besides these like vague sort of takedowns, right, or shots at Kshama that aren't even like factually accurate. I mean, and I think in a lot of ways, right, they are relying on the amount of money that has just been dumped in and short-sighted, right, and voters that can't be really engaged to just pick up a mailer and be like, oh, cool. He's gay too, just like me, right? He likes these. He's involved with Pride Fest. Oh shit! Like I'm gay, or like I'm like an ally, and just these like very quick. They're hoping, right, that voters can't be engaged over the long run.
It's exactly the kind of politics of representation I was critiquing last time I was on the show. And it's important to note that he has been president both of the Broadway Business Improvement Association as well as the Capitol Hill Chamber of Commerce. And I think it's important to note that during his time that Capitol Hill has become noticeably less gay and has become less safe for the gay community.
Well, he had a solution for that.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about the horse carriage solution.
That was one of his greatest policy prescriptions when questioned about the Hill becoming less safe for the gay community at night. He suggested, horse-drawn buggies or something like that. I don't know. You're looking at me like you're confused. It didn't make any sense when he said it either.
Oh my god, some like Amish-esque shit.
I guess. As I said, no gay person was ever assaulted in the era of horse travel, so it's all good.
So I'm interested to hear, like, I think we can get a general idea of what the flavor of what like the Broadway Improvement District and the Capitol Hill Chamber were about, but like, can you fill us in a little more on the specifics?
Yeah, so I mean, the Capitol Hill Chamber of Commerce is pretty self-explanatory. It's one of many neighborhood chambers of commerce in Seattle that's about promoting business and essentially is an agent of gentrification in these neighborhoods. And it was, the Capitol Hill Chamber of Commerce really that spearheaded the effort to create the Broadway Business Improvement Association in the first place.
Okay.
And when it was created, it was the first business improvement association in Seattle. And as far as my research went, I did not find an example of an earlier one in the country. Toronto was a place where these institutions were rolled out in the early 80s. So basically what the Improvement Association does is its tax base is all of the businesses in the Broadway area stretching from roughly Pike Street up to Aloha, I guess, or Mercer Royce up there. And basically all of the businesses in the area basically pay a fee or a tax, and then the city uses that money to beautify the area. They advocated for greater policing of that area. So in the late 80s, they were very much against political activism in the area, especially activism against U.S. intervention in Central America, of which the Sandinista government was decriminalized homosexuality, by the way. And
for the record, Kevin, was that the group that we supported in the United States?
No, definitely not.
Oh, that's a surprise.
And so, there's this campaign against political activism in the area, which Capitol Hill has a reputation I would say, a false reputation of being a center of radical activism in Seattle. In reality, the U District and South Seattle have always had more radical politics.
No, I remember that shit popped up. Swinging from power poles and like hugging cops and shit. So,
hug a cop. That's the capital strategy.
Right on.
But so I mean, the sort of resistance to political activism in the area too is it kind of ties into that thing that we talked about last time around, right? Of whether like Pride should be a march or a march or a parade, right? And I mean, ironically, they finally get the parade maybe they always wanted, but it's downtown now, right? I mean, so we get this general idea of that Egan Orion is part of this force that is like generally making Capitol Hill just another like suburb with just redressed, Bed Bath and Beyonds everywhere or something, I guess.
Well, yeah. Well, it sounds like the improvement district is like the actual formal push for gentrification by the city.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Absolutely. And not just the Business Improvement Association, but the Capitol Hill Chamber of Commerce and the Broadway Business Improvement Association, and a number of other organizations in the city have also pushed for the complete refashioning of the Pike Pine District into what we know of it today, away from like Motor Row, and into this very bougie, boutique, fine dining district that it is today. Also with an increased police presence are things that these business organizations advocated for in their Pike Pine planning study in the early 90s. Gay business owners have always been central figures in these organizations, and Egan Orion is no exception.
So just because he's gay doesn't mean that he is progressive, maybe, or lefty, I guess more accurately. But it's okay though, because no gay people make a minimum wage, so he's not hurting the community.
Oh my god.
So
would anyone care to rebut that statement? Correct the record.
The policing of that area definitely did not harm trans people of color.
Famous friends.
Definitely not.
Yeah. Who are often have to rely on sex work because they are not employed by these very business owners doing business in the area.
Yep.
I mean, this is, by the way, a complete tangent that we'll probably have to cut out later, but on 99, there is like way more like clearly like visible sex workers. Is that Sesta Fosta basically?
Yeah,
that's got to be right.
Yeah,
like,
light switch overnight.
Yeah, that's fucking crazy. All right, well, continuing on. Anyways, so Egan Orion, clear stooge for the business committee on Capitol Hill. So that's in his favor. That's a check on his box. What has Kshama Sawant ever done for anybody, though?
I mean, where do we start? I mean,
we need this to be a video podcast for the faces I'm getting. As is, we've made clear on the show many times, Greg is the Combs of this show. I'm clearly the Sean Hannity of the show. Yeah. Anyways,
no one remembers.
Nobody remembers the aughts. Sorry, guys, the aughts were awful. Anyways, I realize I'm the oldest person here by a lot now. All right.
I mean, just some of the things that Greg mentioned in Kshama's article in Teen Vogue, right? I mean, she's done countless things for the city, right? And for, I think, common working class folks, not even in District 3, but across the city. And I mean, I think it was super telling when I went to a forum, right, that was by the GSBA, and it was Kshama and Orion both showed up, right? Kshama had like 8 or 10 things, right, that she actually had done for queer folks in the city, right?
Sure, yeah.
The only thing that Egan could ever point to is that he had like revamped Pride Fest, right? Yeah. And maybe that's a tangible good, right, for some folks, but like in terms of actually allowing queer folks to continue to live in the city, right? Talking about emphasizing the overwhelming queer, like cutie pop community of like youth homelessness, right?
Sure, yeah.
There's an actual intersectional lens that understands that like queer folks and queer folks of color, right, in a lot of ways are most impacted and most marginalized. in how we think about progress, and how we think about big things like homelessness and housing equity and access in the city. And she gets that. And she's gotten that for years, right? And that's always been both in terms of who she does coalition work with, and also in terms of who she's most a vocal sort of ally and supporter of on city council, right? It is those communities. And so things such as, right, increased renter, increased protections for renters, right? She was the only one that stood up and didn't back the police union contract, right? The only one, literally the only one. And so, I mean, those are just two, right? But, I mean, if you look at her record of 15, and now granted, some of these, this is all broad coalition community work that she's done, and she's been the most visible, right? Because of her place on the council, both seen as sort of the visible advocate, right? And sort of victor in some of those terms. But, I mean, in my opinion, the list is endless. And so, Kevin and I were both from the graduate student union up at UW, and when we were in contract negotiations, right, with the university, and they were trying to gouge us for all they got, she showed up, right? And she's literally the only council member that continually and consistently shows up.
And I would add, I was at the climate march, a month, within the last month?
Yeah,
she was the only sitting council member who showed up and spoke there. And I also want to give a shout out to Sean Scott running in District 4 and Tammy Morales running in District 2, which is my district, for showing up to that as well. Yeah. An event organized by youth for the continuity of this planet. And she was the only city council member who took the time to support the work of these young people and actually care about the future of the human species.
Well, I mean, that cuts to the complaint about her, which is the vast majority of people who are going to be affected by climate change don't live in District 2. So once again, she's out there representing for people who aren't in District 2. Right? I mean, we see kind of as you guys talk about it, the silliness of sort of the arguments against her, right? She doesn't do things only for District 2, right? By improving the minimum wage, it improves somebody in somebody else's district wage too. Or just 3, sorry, Jesus Christ. It's one of those days. Luckily, I don't have a job that involves numbers. All right. So, but yeah. So, I mean, that was sort of one of the complaints. The other complaint is this sort of, which you have kind of seen around the edges with the Egan Orion thing, too, of while she's doing stuff about the minimum wage or renter shit or whatever, what's she doing for the gay community, right? And I think it's sort of important to point out that those things actually impact.
It's let's get real. White gay men don't understand what the fuck intersectionality means, right? And she does. And so just because they're not she's not down there, right, revamping or Pride Fest, right, like Egan Orion is, she's done much more in the everyday lives, right, of queer folks of color because she gets what intersectionality is, right?
Yeah, well, the choice of Egan Orion, I mean, I come back to this this baffling choice of this flash mob guy, right?
We forgot the fact he's the flash mob.
You feel right. There may have been a winnable. I mean, I'm pretty confident just by the sort of energy in District 3, like you were saying earlier, the signs, just every house is for Kshama. But they couldn't they have found someone who could have really made this a tougher race? Or, I mean, again, I don't want to pronounce the end of this race here, but he's just such a weak candidate. And I think it seems like the only criteria for Egan Orion was establishing that what District 3 is, what Capitol Hill is, and what gay Seattle is white, male, family, small business,
money,
middle class people.
Exactly.
That's what the district is, that's what the Hill is, and that's what gay Seattle is. And you're leaving out, like you said, trans people in general. Certainly, anyone queer of color, and I think that perspective is just emblematic in that choice. Forget the fact that is what is Egan Orion's limited perspective and experience and influence up to now in the gay community, but like I feel like he was chosen to represent that, or that somehow really informs the reason he's the candidate. You know?
No, yeah, I mean, like Kevin and I were discussing this the other night, where it's like he is right the candidate in 4 years, right, in which the district will then represent, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So that we're losing working class folks or renters, right, or people that can actually live in that district, right? Like, I mean, I have lived in that district for 6 years, and I have most of the time worked 2 full-time jobs just to stay in that district, right? And the people that support Egan, right, are the type that you just said, right, and are homeowners, right, are not, you know, and have hella family wealth, right, and are not working 2 or 3 jobs, right, are truly working class, right, and in the next 4 years, this may be the last election, right, that Kshama is able to win just because the demographics of D3 are changing.
Yeah.
And he's sort of a sign of that time, right?
And I think it's also not the demographic thing. Shift is not just purely economic, but intersects with queer people of different stripes, right?
Totally.
Like people who don't have families, you know, who aren't raising children and getting married. Yeah.
Getting egg donors.
Right? Yeah.
It's tough out there to get an egg donor.
It is. It's hard out here for an egg donor.
Yeah, I mean, I loved Katie's response. Like,
She had to.
guys, people were mad
had
on
to.
Twitter, but guys, his partner was Latinx.
No.
So
His
it makes
partner
sense.
Oh yeah.
was a Mexican.
Was a Me-
Was
was-
actually
was a
worded it.
And then she goes,
Yeah.
Which
before
took me
you
back to my roots of South Texas.
well, but then she said, before you drag me, that's what he calls himself.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you know,
Charles
She rocks.
McGee's interpretation of The Stranger was much better, which he actually broke it down. Like that whole thing, what's great about that tweet is it's mostly smokescreen, because it's like any like posting for a job. You're gonna, like, if you actually want, like, for example, like if you are posting for a job and what you're thinking is, you know, Irish need not apply. Like, you don't put that in the ad, right? If you don't want to hire a black trans woman, you're not going to say you're going to like cast a net wide enough to get the responses you want, but throw in some, and that is exactly what it is. It's this convoluted shit that Charles Medidi accurately summed up with having like parsed it apart, done the math, and got, oh, he was looking for an egg donor who was not very black.
Yeah.
And that was actually the
but
takeaway.
Greg, have you considered for a second that he has a Latino friend? Or that racists have never had weird, like, psychosexual issues?
Never.
Let's take so Katie's defense, right? And this was obvious. It's so funny because she's like, guys, it's okay. His partner's Mexican, as if to say, so he was trying to match. He wants this kid to look like the two of them had a kid, okay? Which was obvious to everyone who read the thing. That's the first. I was like, oh, this white man the partner here must be a brown person. Like, that's obvious. No one else mentioned it because it's like the first thought you have in your head. What's funny is, that's a totally banal point, but also you're just totally accepting at face value the huge importance Egan Orion placed on his kid looking like him and his partner.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, the weird, like, racial politics of, you know, egg donations and all that kind of shit.
I mean, there's some, like, he wanted their skull shapes to be similar. Like, at the end of the day.
Brain pan has something.
Biracial eugenics.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, you know, and you know,
like
the kid can be any
it's
race.
not even a metaphor.
By definition.
It's actually what he was trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, the kid can be any race as long as it's not the one encoded as slaves in U.S. law. But
he also did not want a white, like a strictly white child either.
No, he wanted a diversity, like, accessory baby.
Colors of Benetton.
United Colors of Benetton.
What a fucking
Well,
weird thing to come
so
out.
he wanted to, you know, presumably this was like a surrogate thing. I mean, but you got to wonder, the other option for him in this situation would have been adoption.
Sure.
and
There's none of those kids out there.
it might have been he wouldn't have had to put an ad like this because he could have just but who he wouldn't have chosen to adopt.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, it's one of those things of Egan Orion has money because somebody who doesn't have money would have typed that up and looked at him and like, ooh, this could blow up in my face.
No, exactly.
This is the kind of shit like rich people do because their life has never had consequences. But I mean, and it kind of gets back to sort of, this comment like this is what the Hill's sort of becoming, right? Is this sort of playground for, kids with money in their like 20s, in the early 30s, and part of the reason why this council race is important, as you guys brought up, is like if something isn't done seriously to affect the demographic change in this city, I mean, forget fucking leftists on the city council. It's
seriously.
it's gonna be just like 6 Donald Trump shitheads up there, or 7 shitheads up there. But
I mean, and I think in a lot of ways, right, it's been interesting to see since Amazon has dumped all that cash right into the race. I mean, even prior to that, right, the number of endorsements that Kshama has been getting, right, even from, let's say, like the 37th Democrats, right? Like, in what fucking world do we live in which, Democrats, right, that's the political landscape of the city, are endorsing a socialist? Great. Like, I'm all for it. But, I mean, even since then, right, some of, like, Kshama's sort of, like, fierce opponents on the council, right, like Teresa Mosqueda as well as Gonzalez, have both endorsed her, right, as just like the sign of the times, right? Anyone, like anyone on that damn council except someone who has dropped so much cash, right, by Amazon is supported by them.
Well, there's also cash coming from, this is documented, like all these races are kind of split between these Amazon chamber candidates and these, not that, they're not even all leftists, but Egan Orion, as well as Alex Peterson, the records show they're getting money from Republican donors, Trump donors, literal, actual fucking Trump donors, which shows you
impossible. This progressive Seattle.
It shows you we come back to
Wait, are we all Democrats?
What Newt Berger taught us at the top here, which is that all struggle is class struggle, because what we see here is that these rich people will always have more common cause, whether they're like Trump, like nationalist, fascist, racist, whatever rich people, or socially liberal, gay, white rich people. They will fucking stick together.
And yes, the Greater Seattle Business Association, which purposefully left gay out of its name as a way of not seeming too gay.
Great start for a gay organization, right? Like a gay advocacy.
Totally.
Their founder Paul Jeffley, in his in memoriam, his obituary literally said, he always reminded us that we are business first, gay second.
Oh. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, that's
like
that
Wait,
is,
and
might as well be etched on the fucking
note,
door.
Can I read an Egan Orion quote?
Yeah.
So Egan Orion said, this is quoted in a Stranger article from the spring, "I don't think of myself as a, quote, business person. I think my work with the chamber..."
I'm a person who does business.
Right. People first
I think
language.
my work with the Chamber and the Business Improvement Association is about creating vibrant communities, and business is part of that. Vibrant, read gentrifying.
Yeah.
I've been doing the Pride Festival for
Like innovative
13
gentrification.
13 years.
Artistic.
That's mainly about community and equity. And that's mostly about highlighting the stories of queer people locally and nationally.
Yeah, equity as in building equity in the home you own.
And again, like the GSBA, promoting the idea that gay people can be good white capitalists just like everybody else. So, I hate his use of the word queer people there. It just irks me. But because he's not talking about queer people.
No,
he's talking
sure.
about assimilationist gay people
Yeah.
and
Married,
maybe
white.
assimilation as trans people.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
when the
Yeah.
business community is telling you, hey, business is part of the community, which one they think is most important, and when they talk about vibrancy, we know what they're talking about, right? You know, disruption through eviction, right? But yeah, I mean, and I think, one of the things that's kind of interesting has been maybe, I guess we'll see when the election comes, but maybe how out of touch just all the rich people are, in the sense that the entire Egan campaign literally just seems to boil down to he's not Sawant. And also, it turns out in every other district seems, because they, you know, there's like the Solomon flyer or whatever that's
It's
like Mark Solomon versus Kshama Sawant.
Tim Burgess's pack, right?
Yeah, that's Tim Burgess's thing. But I mean, it's like
People
this
for
weird,
Seattle.
Yeah.
and it's this like 80s era anti-communism. You know, I mean, we saw it at the national level. I mean, that was like the Democrats' pivot to like completely face planting in 2016, and nobody seems to care yet. They keep going on about it, and all I can think is just rich people and the rest of us have we've diverged so much. We're now actually just separate species, right? Like, this is the fucking time travel.
It's society, yeah.
Society, yeah, exactly. Why did I say time travel? Society. But yeah, we like just become separate species. And like, yeah, this is a thing that we all care about and or panic about all the time. Surely the poors will care about it too. And I mean, the interesting thing is that like, I think harping, everybody knows Sawant's a socialist, and harping on it just seems to make people like her more.
I mean, what people don't seem to grasp, and this was evident looking at the 2016 presidential campaign, is that those of us who are of a post-Cold War, like the post-Cold War generation, we don't give a fuck what labels you put on people. Capitalism has fucked us, and like, this is all we got. So, fuck yeah, I'll vote for a goddamn socialist.
Yeah. All you got to do is say that, you know, Mal's first act was killing the landlords, and you probably convert most of Seattle.
and like a socialist that has actually gotten results for people.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, and this is like going back to this like shitty article on Crosscut again, is like this notion that a like brown radical woman of color, right, is only subservient, right, to outside forces that are like pouring in money to the campaign, right, and pulling her strings is super insulting, right? I mean, like
it's an echo of both Red Scares in American history.
Yeah, that's the tendrils from Moscow.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the interesting thing too, the Sawant one is, which Berger hinted on, and it's like this thing that the Seattle Times, everybody else like goes on all the time, is she is responsible to Socialist Alternative, and that we saw her having discussions with them about politics and stuff via email. It's like, yeah, she belongs to a political party. That political party has politics that they clearly state,
They have
and
a
then
platform.
has a platform, and then she
they advocate.
executes the platform that she ran.
Yes, exactly.
But I love this idea of the like basically sitting around like, guys, that's not how politicians are supposed to work. All right, they don't promise you shit, and they do whatever they want. All right,
She's doing it wrong.
And the Democratic Party says a lot of things in its platform, and it's fucking meaningless.
yeah, and it does none of them. So that's how you're supposed to do it.
It's like they are like laying out a blueprint for how like politics could work, what a political party could be, you know, and like, yeah, it's amazing.
Well, I mean, it's the slam that you get on that's been like hitting on Bernie in this primary campaign too, of the like, well, yeah, anybody can be popular by promising good things and then delivering them. It's like they just stand there like, I mean, clearly that's wrong. Why would you do that? Well, which I feel is like the slam and so on. Like, anybody can be popular by promising good things.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to. I think it's legitimate though for them to use Kshama in those mailers in their campaigns in all the districts, right? Because they're really doing what they accuse her of, but they're correct to do it, right? She is I won't even say a pole of power, but she is a vocal left voice that could be joined with more in this next council, and so they're right to campaign against her in the whole city. It's not completely dishonest to say that by casting this vote for a shill like Orion or a like entrenched lanyard like Peterson, you are casting a vote against Kshama Sawant in the next council and what she represents and her ability to get anything done, you know?
Yeah.
That is what this is about. This is about what the makeup of the council is going to be, and is it going to be more votes? Actually, some more people who might actually vote with Sawant sometimes, like maybe when the next fucking cop union contract comes up, when they vote for some tax on Amazon unanimously, and then in the middle of the night have to vote on it again, and who's going to get spooked?
Yeah.
I mean, it's very clear to me that in every district, mostly, this is an election that is about the gentrifiers versus the gentrified.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. I mean, Mark Solomon is like, I mean, who found that guy to run in District 2? I do not see a chance that he beats Tammy Morales in District 2. A pro-cop, which is essentially what he's running on.
Yeah. He's running on his record.
In District 2.
Endorsed by Spogs.
In the one district in the city that is actually majority working class people of color, I don't see it happening. Mm-hmm. But in all of the district races, that's really the line in the sand that is drawn is the council. They're running against the quote unquote council. What's funny is the council is being identified as a council that's protecting the gentrified, which, by the way, it isn't.
No, not at all.
Anyway, it's fascinating to see
that. The council's
that.
made up of two camps. You have Kshama Sawant on one side and the homeless on the other.
Yeah.
That's where the power really lies in this city.
According
Thank you,
to
Christopher.
a factual documentary I watched called
Yes.
Seattle is Dying, that is in fact the case. Yeah, and and I mean they'll never forgive her, and they complain about it to this day. That she, because they're all angry, because they're all fucking nerds too, but they're all angry. They think she cheated because when she wanted to say like the $15 an hour minimum wage thing, she had people come to the council, like yell at the council members, right? Yeah, she's like by proposing a popular platform and then asking people to popularly advocate for it. That's a cheat code. Like, you can't do that because we can't do that because nobody likes anything we propose, right? That seemed to be the complaint from the council.
Technocratic rule versus democracy. They want to sit there and just enact the whatever is going to increase local investment dollars or some shit. That's not what happens when you have Kshama Sawant to let the hordes into the building. Her staff holding the door open, like keeping the elevator propped open to let in the seething masses.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we can't let it go without being mentioned, but the Egan Orion mailer, the Make Seattle Great Again mailer, too. It's just, we just got to bring it back to this. I mean, these people are Republicans. Let's be serious. I mean, come on. Like, in any other city. Yeah, any other city.
This city is very confused about itself. Republicans just run as Democrats here and call themselves progressives. And that's, we actually have a very conservative government.
Well, let's not forget too that most Democrats are also
Yeah.
Well,
it's almost that happens when you have like this stupid two-party system where neither party has any like actual politics other than the fact that they just represent business. But
though the Republican Party has shifted pretty decisively into a white nationalist camp. But
Nihilist.
So Mayor Jenny in any other city would just be a never Trump Republican.
Yes, exactly. Yep, she would.
that's in line with Democratic politicians all over the country. I mean, look at Rahm Emanuel in Chicago.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, what do we think the shots are that Sawant has? Greg, you seem very confident. I feel less confident.
I mean, I don't mean to overstate my confidence. I guess, I might have gotten a little ahead of myself there because I don't think we actually know. Look, they're pumping a shitload of money into this. I'm just imagining. I just think it's so hard. They're only going to win this by pumping in all that money.
Yeah.
And just flooding, that district with people. And, there are people who are just not engaged who pick up all those mailers and the voter's guide and they're just like, oh, okay, this is someone running against Sawant. But I think I would just be so, what a travesty. Like, bad enough. I mean, it would be bad enough to see Kshama go down to any chamber candidate, but such a wet
Nothing.
shit, like a nothing, just a.
He's like a steaming pile of shit. I mean, like,
He's not even a good pro-business candidate. He's
Nope.
not a good. He just like that's why I think I want to look ahead and I want past election day and I picture myself going, wow, you guys really fucked up. Why didn't you actually like pick a good candidate to take on Sawant? But I don't know. But we don't know. It's actually going to be close. Like you can't know with this massive amount of money that was just dropped in.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Well,
I mean, District 3 should be knocking doors up until the day of.
yeah, seriously.
Yeah, and once again, I'd just like to say, if you don't live in District 3, vote illegally in District 3 anyways. It is not a real crime. Just do it. All right.
So few crimes are.
Yeah. And, you know, which, I mean, we haven't even got into the various Egan Orion scandals, like Uncle Ike, you know, giving him
free
campaign
space.
headquarters.
He was fined $1,000 for that stranger.
That's honestly more on the people at the stranger for being
Yeah.
fucking just absolute pieces of dipshit.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
like
so
unsuspiciously Dan Savage.
Yeah.
Now I don't. Did any of you?
8%.
Did any of you see this week? Kshama just went
Yeah.
right back, and now there's a Kshama cover
Yeah.
on the stranger
Yeah.
that she will probably get fined $1,000 for.
Yeah.
well, I bet they actually put the right verbiage.
Yes.
In there. Well, at the end of the
It's not
day,
that hard.
They paid with that fine, that ludicrous, like not even slap on the wrist fine. The Orion campaign paid $36,000 for that ad instead of $35,000.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Like,
The Kshama ad is the thing I appreciate about it is it says the only candidate endorsed by the stranger
yeah. Another thing I appreciate about
in District 3.
that ad is it shows a picture of Kshama Sawant smiling because I feel like the only pictures I ever see of her are like caught in a scowl, you know, like like in
Again,
those
I think
last Como doc.
Yeah, they greatly overstate. I think because they're all like scared of women, they like greatly overstate the fact that like, yeah, most people are like mad most of the time. Like, if I see somebody mad, I'm like, yeah, that's about where I'm at all the time. That's cool.
Yeah,
like,
shit's
like,
fucked.
yeah. Like people
fucked.
should be angry about shit. Like it's okay to be mad about shit. But yeah, I mean that fucking stranger piece. You know, clearly that was Dan Savage's vote. I think we can all agree on that. And you know, what a fucking sack of shit. So what a fucking Dave Meinert protecting fucking sack of shit. Whatever.
Yeah, not
Fuck
a
that
ton
guy.
of love lost for the stranger on this podcast.
No. Yeah, and rightfully so.
Yeah. Oh. All right. Well, shall we wrap up then?
Yeah, I mean, if
Wow.
you guys have anything else to add on this race, on Egan, on Kshama, on District 3?
No, I mean, I think I have my fingers crossed, knock on wood, that she does get reelected. I mean, I think the number of community organizations, unions, individuals that have showed up to both endorse her but door knock to donate has been really astounding.
Yeah.
But it is also terrifying, I think, living in District 3, just the coalescence, right, of racists, of sort of NIMBYs, right, of all these folks that are anti-socialist, right, racist, home-owning, anti-homeless folks that, you can walk down the street and see people ripping down her signs, right, or posting over it. And just in a different way that I've not seen in past elections, it really seems like those who are against her, right, in her politics and what she supports and what she stands for are just kind of all out. I mean, you've seen this, right? I think the stranger endorsement thing is sort of the epitome of this, at least with Egan Orion's like false cover on that, right? Where it's like they'll literally go to any length, and it's straight up lying, right, in some of these instances to try and, get votes away from her. And not that's always been politics. I get that, right? But it really feels like on that side, it's been super nefarious, and they've pulled the gloves off quite early.
I think it's very telling that the head tax is what seemed to have really woken them all up.
Exactly.
And, and I mean, there's the sign things. I mean, those fucking Como documentaries, quote unquote documentaries. Which are some of the foulest shit that's ever. And she's the key villain of all of them.
Totally.
It is pretty astounding, to be honest.
Yeah, I would just add that in the last few days, I've driven around District 3 quite a bit, and it's it's an interesting district. You know, on the one hand, you have Montlake and Madison Park, which are incredibly wealthy, and all the lakefront property. And, you know, Egan Orion is all you see there. It's, of course, the only signs you saw there when in the last election were for Jenny Durkin.
Yeah.
But then driving around the Central District today, which is significant. I lived in the Central District from 2012 to 2016, and it is a different place than it was then. There's a lot. It is highly gentrified, and I think there are a lot of people who live there who understand that process of gentrification, even if they are themselves gentrifiers of a certain kind. Generally are renters. There's a lot less home ownership in that part of the district. And I was pleasantly surprised that literally I drove down one block and every single house had a Kshama Sawant sign. It's incredible how passionate people are on both sides of this race in a district election. Never mind that Bernie Sanders chimed in on Twitter in support of Tammy and Sean and Kshama and Lisa Herbold in District 1, calling out Amazon. And I mean, Amazon put how many million dollars?
Yeah, so far 1.5. Yeah.
$1.5 million into a city council race so they can continue to just have their way with this fucking city at the expense of its people. I mean, this election it'll be really interesting to see what happens next Tuesday. It's going to be very telling and to see where the wind is blowing. And I'm hopeful. I'm confident about District 2, but I'll be honest, I'm nervous about the other races.
Yeah. It's hard not to Kevin used to live on Capitol Hill, right? You'll remember when we used to go hang out that place he used to live at, right? It's hard not to see the difference in Capitol Hill when you walk around it now, right? 10 years later, even.
Yeah.
So it's we'll see what happens, I guess.
Yeah, in large part thanks to these organizations that Egan Orion has been a part of.
They got their wish, higher income residents. So.
And I mean, I don't think we can discount the amount of anger, particularly from business owners, right, out of the fear coming out of the head tax last year, right? Yep. That they will do everything in their fucking power to make sure they can get their most vocal critic off council.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, their hatred ever is all the reason to vote for it.
No, I mean, honestly, the easiest way, I know it's like we're almost a week off from when ballots need to be in, but you know, one thing that I've always found successful, if you're busy, if you can't donate, if you can't go door knock, honestly, just go through your texts and just text people. Go through your contacts, right? And everyone who lives in the city, just remind them to go vote. I'm sure we all are pretty civically minded, right, and engaged, but for some people, right, it's just not even on their radar. So it's a really good, easy way to just, right, show up for an hour, sit down, go through your contacts, and make sure people get, drop those ballots. And if they don't, have them come up with a plan of how they're going to do it.
Yeah.
And if they suck, don't remind them.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah. That's,
Duh. You should actually probably just delete them from your phone.
Yeah, that is key. That's when you're knocking doors, when you're phone banking. It's always about asking, do you have a plan to vote? Because voting, like suicide, isn't probably going to happen until you have a plan, so.
Yeah, exactly like suicide. Thanks, Greg.
Wow, might as well close on that.
Yeah.
Do you have a plan?
Yes, it's around the corner from my house.
All right. Well, thank you again for being on the show, and thanks for listening. We have a couple patrons to thank. So, Mangus, thank you, and Evan Matthews, thank you for joining the fold.
Yeah. Look forward to that sweet Patreon content. The most recent of which is somewhat late. Not that there even is a late. Don't expect anything.
Yeah.
We owe you nothing.
Broke rule number 1, Greg. All right. And
yeah, with that, I think we can close out. So thank you again for being on the show, Dr. Kevin and Bradley. We really appreciate it. And why are you laughing, Greg?
Okay, goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Happy Halloween.
Yeah.